Hey Jared, did you watch that movie that I told you to watch? You know, The Assignment? Memories of Murder?
When I looked it up, there was Memories of Murder,
Yeah,
there was Memoirs of Murder,
Oh.
and then there was a 2013 Memories of Murder that I was very confused by. Did you see that on there?
No, I did not. As a matter of fact, I went straight to what I was looking for because I've already seen the film.
Yes, yeah, but it's funny because I was comparing the two. I was looking at them both. I'm like, they have kind of different descriptions, but then I looked at the cast and it was the exact same cast for the 2013 version. So I think it's the exact same movie.
Oh,
but
you know
maybe
what
they
that might
updated
be?
it.
That might have been like a remastered re-release.
Yeah. So I watched the remastered version. Thankfully, I was a little worried because I'm like, I hope I don't watch the wrong
Are
movie.
you sure you did?
Well, yeah, it's got the talking penguin in it, right?
No.
He's got really happy feet. He dances around. He's like, I'm gonna dance.
I'm going to say a hard
Great
no on this improv. We are not going to find that game.
Hey guys, welcome to the Old Boys Podcast, where all your movie dreams come true. Hold for applause. And with me is my very special friend, Danny.
Hi. I don't think you said your name, though.
Hold for applause. Oh, my name? Hold for applause. Hold for laughter. It's Jared. Hi, I'm Jared. So, I don't know what I'm doing. This show, we review movies for fun because it's fun, and we like to have fun.
Oh.
Dan.
Okay.
What movie did we watch?
We watched a film called Memories of Murder, and before we talk about that, I have a couple things that I want to talk about.
I will allow this.
Okay, the first thing is I no longer write for that DVD site, but
Oh, no.
as a parting gift to me, he allowed me to get the Diabolic pick for this month, and I got a Blu-ray copy of The Holy Mountain. I'm so excited. I can't wait to watch that in high def.
Alejandro Jodorowsky.
The other thing is one of the last DVDs I had to write this review for.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold it up to you so you can see it. It's called Conduct. Every Move Counts. And it's basically a documentary about conductors of orchestras. You know, the people that step up in front of everybody and, like, wave their hands with the little baton so they follow and, like, keep in time. And it's about these people who, like, are world-renowned conductors who go for a competition. So who can be the best conductor? And you would think that this is going to be a boring documentary, but it is phenomenally interesting. It's crazy. And then, like, just whenever you think it can't get any more interesting, and then it does start to get boring at times... Basically, they're in practice.
So wait, just when you think it can't get any more interesting, it gets really boring?
Yeah. You're like, wait a minute, it can't get any more interesting, and then it doesn't, and it starts to get boring, and you're like, oh shit, this is going to be a terrible movie. Like, but the film saves itself because they're filming these conductors during their practices, and the judges that are judging them also judge them on the practice.
What?
And one
That's
of the
not fair.
things, no, the way this competition works is totally fair. One of the things that the judges look for is charisma and moxie. And whenever the judges are like, okay, you're being boring, they fucking say, hey, you're being boring. And that is fucking hilarious to watch the conductors react to it. Because a lot of them, they suck. But then a lot of the, like, there's a really cool Japanese guy. He's just like all over the fucking place. And it was so fun to watch. But I just like the fact that the actual judges move the fucking movie along. Like, hey, could you not be so boring? And they're like yelling at them in German. It's so funny.
Does the Thomas the Tank Engine make an appearance?
No, I see what you did there, though. I see what you did there. Fun fact, did you know that George Carlin was Conductor Tom? Or whatever the fuck his name was? Conductor Bill?
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, for like a couple, like at least a season, maybe 5 episodes. He was
what?
He was the conductor.
He was the main character?
No, he wasn't Tom. He was the conductor. Like the live action guy.
Oh, I gotcha. He was the guy driving the train. Okay. He was the man inside of the sentient being.
Correct. Can you imagine Thomas the Tank Engine as George Carlin? Hey, kids. There's no dirty words.
God's not real. Fuck you.
Cunt.
We're all going to die. Slow, terrible deaths.
That's the show that I want to watch.
Life is meaningless.
Now, with that aside gone, we did watch a film called Memories of Murder,
Yes.
2003, directed by Bong Joon-ho, before he ever did The Host and got super famous, and Okja and Snowpiercer. Before he did all of his international hits, he did some Korean hits.
Yes, this is the Bong period before the Joo-ho.
Yes, the Bong before the Joon-ho, absolutely. Anyway, this film is about basically Korea's first serial killer, or at least a small province of Korea's first serial killer, and the terrible police that are trying to figure it out. And I say terrible meaning they have unorthodox ways of getting to people to confess. And they're very brutal, and they get a guy in from Seoul to help them out, who does nothing in the face of of their brutality. You would think he would say something, but he literally says nothing and just watches them do it and just shakes his head. He's like, "Oh, you're
right." That is interesting.
Anyway, they never are able to find the killer. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
But it really turns the film into less of who done it and more of like a character study between all these policemen and really the country of Korea itself, and like, what do we do in the face of these adversities? Do we follow these, traditions of brutal policehood, or do we try the new shit? And I think my favorite thing about this, and we're going to talk about it, is neither one of them work, because the brutal police people who've been doing it forever, they're like, science sucks, and the new Soul guy is like, no, science is the best, and it's all the facts are here. You've never seen these facts so much. There's so many facts, facts, and then it ends up the facts don't work either, and then that makes the Soul guy pretty much shift over to the brutal, Neanderthal Koreans.
What is amazing about this movie? There's many
so you
things
liked it.
that are amazing about it. So first impressions, this movie is fantastic.
I think this is Bong Joon-ho's masterpiece. It's beautiful.
This movie is a masterpiece. Yes. It's so fucking good. And you're right, the murder mystery, I was obsessed. After I finished the film, I was like, who's the murderer? Mm-hmm. Who's the murderer? I was looking it up. I was trying to find out. That's not really the important thing about it.
And we're going to talk about it.
But we will guess who the murderer is.
We're going to talk about it because first impressions for me, I mean, you know how I am about endings. This is in my top 10 favorite endings of all time.
What a fantastic ending.
Oh my God.
But the ending of this movie will piss people off.
But it's, I mean, if you are looking for the murder mystery, yes, it will piss you off. But if you actually get what the film is trying to get at, you're like, and you're going to cum your pants. It's good. Oh, it's so good. I mean, cream your jeans. I mean, enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
So we'll talk about that at length later in the episode.
The cinematography in this movie is fantastic. I love how it was shot. I love what it was shot on.
As well as the music. The music is beautiful.
Yes, the music is so fucking good. Korean movies, we've discussed this. They do multi-genre. They do whatever the fuck they want. They just mash all the genres together. They're kind of like Bollywood movies, but without the dancing.
And more of the heartache and depression and nihilism.
Yes. Because this film can go from insanely funny to I have extreme anxiety about what's happening to I am terrified. You're all over the place. And it does it so well. And it's guided by such beautiful shots throughout the film. Oh, gosh. I could gush. And I did. and I will. Again. This movie is so good, Dan. What the
You're
fuck?
welcome. Well, as soon as I
you.
saw it on Amazon for free, I'm like, oh my God, I want to watch that again so bad. Why not sign it for the podcast?
It is a longer film,
is,
but I enjoyed this movie so much, I went back and watched certain scenes that I liked again.
Mm-hmm.
And then other scenes that I thought, like, oh, maybe I could figure out who the killer is if I watch this scene again. But they're too good. Because, there's that one scene where it shows the killer, he jumps out of the bushes to grab a lady, right? And you can kind of see him. I like freeze framed on that, and I was staring at it. I watched that scene like 20 times.
You can kind of see him, but you can't see him. And it's infuriating if you really want to know who it is.
But the trick is yeah. Okay, so first of all, go watch this movie. We're going to spoil it. We've already spoiled a little bit, but we're going to do a lot more spoiling. So
we haven't told anybody
film,
like the details
we
of the
haven't
murders.
told anybody.
We haven't told
Dan,
anybody.
one thing that we don't do here is we haven't told anyone. That's what we do. That's our main goal.
We haven't told anyone the details, the MO, so to speak.
The modus operandi. Yes. So go watch it. It's on Amazon. And get your fat ass over there and make it work.
Amazon.
Thank you. We begin on a dark and stormy night. No, we don't. We begin on it's like a beautiful day. And we have this like farmer going by.
In the rice paddy fields.
Yes, of beautiful Korea. And we have a detective. He's sitting on this little tractor thing. He's going along. These little kids are running around like idiots, bothering him. And he's trying to investigate this gutter because I guess he's got a call about a murder or something. But the little kid is there, and he's like imitating everything that the detective does. So these two detectives, or these inspectors or whatever that we get, I think their name's the local detective, who's more brass and like wants to plant evidence
character.
And yes, is Park.
Yeah. Well, he was also Park in The Host. He was the blonde-haired dad from The Host.
Oh, okay.
As well as like he's arguably Korea's most famous actor, I would say.
Really?
Like he's in a lot of really good shit.
The city detective, who we'll meet later, is named Joe.
Yes.
So we got Park and Joe, and then there's some other ancillary, words are fun, characters that we'll meet later. I love this little scene. This is like the very first thing that happens of this little boy mimicking everything the detective is saying. He's like, hey, you kid, get out of here. He's like, hey, you kid, get out of here. And it keeps happening over and over and over. And I'm already just charmed. My dick is charmed right off of this fucking scene. And I'm like, this is so good. Because they're mixing this high comedy with when he looks into the drainage system, he sees this dead woman.
Yeah, like
with like something so morbid and terrible.
Bound and covered in ants.
Yeah, this is a perfect summation of good Korean films right here. You could just take this and use it like in a fucking film school course. So, but like, here's what Korean film is, and just show this one scene.
You know what?
We're like, boom, it's done.
I'm gonna do that next year.
Yeah, you should.
Oh my God, that's a
It's
perfect
perfect.
idea.
This is a great summation of how good Korean films can be and what they can do with cross-genre, and they do it constantly in this film.
Oh, that's
it's
such a
masterfully
good idea.
done. It's one of my favorite scenes in the film. It's the opening. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then from there, it starts to lead into the local detective is trying to solve this murder, and I believe he finds out, like, oh, this woman was like followed a lot by this mentally handicapped man. Who had an obsession with her. So then they start questioning him.
A couple things to note here.
Yes.
It's 2003 when this film comes out, and it's also South Korea, where they don't really give a shit about our norms and standards in 2018, for that matter. So they have no problem saying the word retarded.
Yeah,
and they still don't.
The time where the movie takes place is like 1986 or something.
But they still call people retarded in Korea.
So I believe they find another crime scene. They've been questioning the handicapped guy. They haven't got anything from him. They find another crime scene. And like a lot of these crime scenes are overrun by either paparazzi or locals. They can't ever seem to cordon off the crime scene.
See,
they're terrible.
I think that's my favorite. If the first scene doesn't get you into this film, how you're describing it, where it's like it's just this stark contrast between like this cutesy thing and then just this awful vision of a corpse.
A corpse?
My favorite scene is whenever he's like yelling at everybody to like go away. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And then like, I think he's the sergeant or the first sergeant. He like falls down the embankment.
Yes.
And then the second guy
there's
does
him
the
now,
same
and he
thing.
falls down like an idiot.
Everybody who's trying to come down the embankment just falls. It's so funny.
And he's like, these idiots. And it's funny because you think this detective is a really good detective. So he's making fun of all these guys. Like, these dang morons, they can't get anything done. He's like, I'm the best. I can tell who the murderer is by just looking at him. Like, he says that a lot. He's like, I got the shaman eyes. And this leads into a great critique of, like, detective work and police work in general. Like how you were saying, how, like, you just really can't tell. Even with all of these... with our advancements in technology and DNA or whatever, it's beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, so basically in this film, there's no such thing as a, like, super cop. There's no such thing as a good cop, per se. Like, good not as in good or bad. Like, not morally good, I mean.
The romanticized version of what a detective is.
Yeah, like the superhero cop, there's no such thing.
And they even touch on this in this film because the main character, Park, is obsessed with that stuff. He even tells a character he is interrogating, tell the truth, just like in all those detective movies. You know, he's like, why aren't you acting like the detective movies that I watch? Because he's like, they never lie in those or something. I'm like, this is fucking crazy. This guy is so warped in the head about like, and he acts like that too. Like, he's like, oh, we're going to go stake the scene out, or we're going to do this because that's what happens in all the detective movies. And then he's slowly starting to realize, like, that's not like real life. Like, in real life, it's ambiguous.
It's so
you don't know what's going on.
It's
random.
Well, he's gone his entire career doing that, and what upsets it is this homicide case where it's like, oh shit, this is
he's been
real
doing
now.
pretty well apparently.
Yeah. Because he hasn't had to deal with something as intense as like rape, murder, and like serial rape murder.
So they find the second body. He finds a footprint, and this dumb farmer is driving through, and he's like, stop. And the fucking farmer runs over the evidence.
This is the scene. Well, this marriage of scenes is what because I remember liking Memories of Murder a lot, but I forgot what it was about. Like what the tensions were. And so the farmer runs it over with his tractor. And then later, whenever he goes pick up Detective Joe from Soul or whatever, he stops where that tractor ran it over, took the mentally handicapped guy's shoes, and then planted a footprint. And I'm like, oh, now I remember this film. So basically, he like that sets up how kind of shady this guy is as a cop. It's like, I need
but
something
also,
to
Joe
stick.
doesn't stop him. Like
exactly.
Said. Joe does not stop him.
He just kind of laughs and is like, okay.
Gosh, that's fucked up.
And you know how Joe tries to stop him? He just tries to be better than him and like shove it in the sergeant's face. Because that's what the whole movie is.
Joe is what Park's aspiration to be is. Like, he is jealous of him because he's this big city detective who really knows his stuff and knows what he's talking about, and he thinks he's really, really cool. There's even one point where Joe is like smoking or whatever in the woods, and he's listening to a recording, and he's trying to figure out who the murderer is, and him and his buddy are watching him because they're there for some other dumb reason, and he's like, man, he is really cool though. And he's like, but I fucking hate him. He's like, but he's worthless. And so like he's fighting against it, but he wants to be him. So we have him planting evidence. We have them destroying the crime scene just because they let people walk around or whatever. And if they would have had all this information, they probably would have been able to catch the killer a lot better, which is funny. So we end up at a point where they've been interrogating the mentally handicapped guy.
Where do they find the mentally handicapped guy to take him in? Because he's doing something very interesting that I want to try.
Aren't they at like a restaurant and he like falls out of the restaurant?
No, he's at an arcade first. This is where they pick him up.
Oh, yes, he's at an arcade. Yeah. And he's got a stick on a button and he's like slapping the stick and it like hits the button.
He's using a ruler. Like he's anchoring the ruler with his hand and then he's making it bounce up and down to hit the fucking arcade buttons faster. I'm like, that's an amazing idea. I want to try that. 1986. Life hacks.
And they are like, they do this great good cop, bad cop scene.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Where Park is like, hey, so why don't you just tell us that you killed this lady? He's like, I didn't do it. And he's like, we really think you did. He's like, no, I didn't do it. And then you just hear boom, and then like a door opens up, He's like, hey, my friend's coming.
He's really sweet.
Yeah, he's a really sweet guy, and he really means well, but sometimes he gets a little angry, and then he jump kicks him.
So fucking funny.
His buddy, we're just going to call him the jump kicker.
Well,
I don't
okay,
know.
but also
what do you want
Park,
to call him?
Park has a jump kick at one point too, which I
He
forgot.
does a few jump kicks.
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the jump kick counter that I had was about 6, which was incredible for this film.
I'll call this guy the sidekick. He is Park's sidekick.
More like jump kick.
I thought this dude was the murderer at one point because the MO of the killer is to kill a woman in red when it's raining and during a song that is played. And I thought maybe because he had a red inseam on his jacket, that was supposed to be a visual cue to me to tell me that maybe this guy was the killer. But I didn't know that this movie was based on real events that were unsolved murders. So,
and when was the last time that you saw a
guess.
movie that was based on real events that was this fucking good?
Yeah, it's
A rarity,
yeah.
I think.
No, yeah, it is. I agree. So they beat the shit out of him. They torture him.
Oh, he puts booties on too, so it doesn't scratch his face while he's kicking.
Yes,
him in the
that
face.
was really great. It's like, this is so you
And
don't
they're
scuff my
they're
boots.
they're not just any booties. They're like they have floral print on them and they're pink.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
And then there's a scene later on where the handicapped guy gets revenge on him. Well, I'll tell it now. So, like, the handicapped guy ends up stabbing this dude with a nail in his leg during a bar fight. This is so ridiculous. And then later on, the cop is so dumb that he doesn't get his leg treated for
Tetanus,
the rust
yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, tetanus. The doctor, when they finally go to the doctor, he's like, "We're gonna have to cut that leg off." And he's like, he's lucky he didn't get it hit a little higher above the knee. And so it's like there's a scene, it's such a sad scene of him staring at his friend while he's getting the operation done. And he's got to sign the papers because he has no family because he's like a brother to him. And then it cuts to Park is staring at the shoes that his buddy used to wear to kick people. And it shows the booty. And he has a little emotional scene about how he's sad that his friend can't kick anybody anymore. And it's really silly, but also like, oh, it's like an end of that era of them. It's also culminating with him realizing maybe we shouldn't abuse and beat people all the time anymore. So it's that and this silly shit of like the old days are gone now, which is kind of weird. Wow. Me saying this is me realizing it, by the way. I'm like, this is kind of nuts. Because I thought it was just a silly scene, but those double meanings, man, they get you good. So they're beating him up. They're trying to get him to confess. They get him to sign a confession.
Yes.
And they're like, now we're going to go make him reenact the murder. And there's a big media spectacle. And he goes out there and they put a woman in drag so he can pretend to be the lady that gets molested. And, so there is a scene where Park is driving and he sees a woman being accosted by a man. And they both kind of fall down an embankment together. And so he jumps out of his car and he's like, what the hell are you doing with this lady? And this is where he jump kicks this woman. I watched this scene 3 times because I wanted to see him jump kick him that many times.
So instead of him falling down the embankment like an idiot, like he was criticizing people for, he just literally jumps down the embankment because the guy fell down it.
This is not a stunt. He does this.
Trying to get up from falling down the embankment, and he gets up into this guy's feet that are just coming down.
He kicks this dude square in the chest. It's real. There's no way they could have faked it.
It's amazing. The other thing
you see it happen
that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Because we talked about that scene. That scene is fantastic.
That's when he meets Joe. That's what I was trying to establish. And there's a little thing where Joe is like, how good of a detective are you if you can't even tell that I'm a detective too, or something like that. They had like a weird little exchange where he was trying to tell him like, you must be a pretty bad detective if you're accosting ladies. And then he kind of jumps back at him. I'm like, that's kind of right. And that's how they meet, is him beating the shit out of Joe. Okay, but go ahead.
Before we get into this media spectacle, one of the things that I wrote down as this character, this film came out in 2003, I believe.
Yes,
and I
it did.
think Lord of the Rings came out in 2001. Tell me how much you think that the first suspect sounds like Gollum.
Oh, God. I didn't get that. I didn't get that, actually.
Like Gollum.
Does he?
It's so funny.
The precious. You know what I thought was interesting, doing research for this movie after I watched it, They released this film in 2003, and then in 2004, they had another murder that they thought was similar to the old murders of the 1980s.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yes. They don't know if it's related or not. They just thought this was a strange coincidence that this murder seemed very similar.
Jeez.
Which kind of ties into the end of the film, which we will talk about, baby. Gonna talk about it. So we got these freaking idiots. A media spectacle. Oh, they're all celebrating, by the way. They're taking pictures. Park is taking pictures with him and his boss, the police chief.
I didn't get, why does the boss change?
What do you mean?
Like, he starts answering to the sergeant instead of the chief.
I don't know. I missed that. I just thought it was just the head honcho guy, the boss guy. But yeah, so they're already celebrating them catching the killer, even though they know that they framed him and set it up. And this is common knowledge in this town that the police are corrupt and that they beat people. And there's at one point a suspect says, even children know what you guys do. Like, it's so obvious. And Inspector Joe basically comes up and says, listen, there's no way that the killer or this handicapped guy could have tied this double knot because the man's hands are like webbed. He can barely open his hands to hold on to anything, really. So there's no way he could do all these things that he said he was doing, like strangle the woman with the panties or whatever. And so it's like, he's innocent. There's no way. And then they let him go, and Joe chastises Park for coaching him during the confession. But Park is like, no, I didn't do that. Even though he does it later. He's like, no, I didn't do that. But he didn't believe it.
Right.
And then much later on, they come back to that, and they're like, you were being honest? Because he was in such disbelief because out of everything else he saw, he was trying to frame this guy. And the one thing that was real was his confession, but it wasn't a confession. It was his eyewitness account
because he was
of an actual murder.
He was hiding in a haystack. Like, he just
like
was
a weirdo.
there.
Well, because he's a weird dude. He was spying on the woman, so that's why he was there.
But in the most ridiculous place.
But we're not there yet, my friends. So now they're back to square one. They're fucked up. They're like, damn it. We got to catch this guy. We got this new city guy, Joe. And Joe's like, listen, we're going to use all my investigative skills. Yeah.
The new boss is like, what is similar amongst all of these murders? And then Park's like, I don't know. And then he's like, well, what about the other guy? Like, Park's sidekick. He's like, I don't know. And then Joe's like, it was raining every time there was a murder.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, she wasn't the female detective. She's like, maybe she was the female detective. They have a female.
She's just, she is.
Is she the female detective? She notices that not only is a woman red, and not only is it on a rainy night, but it's also, there's this song that is always requested on a radio station.
Sad Letter.
It's called Sad Letter. And that's what sets this guy off, apparently.
Is that a real song, I wonder?
Yeah, it's a Korean song.
And, a man is sending in postcards to play this song on rainy days, which is very interesting. And it's funny because, like, they have that theory, and then Park has his theory of, like, I think it's a bald monk who shaves his crotch.
Oh, my God.
Because whenever the killer kills, there's no evidence, and there's no pubic hair on the body, so it must be a bald monk who shaves his crotch. And his boss is like, how are you going to find out
How does he go find out, Jared?
Are you going to just make random people stop in the street and drop their pants? And then they immediately cut him to a bathhouse. And he is staring at everyone's dick. Every person that walks by, he's looking at them, like, intently looking at their dicks.
And then whenever he can't look at them, and he goes up to them, he's like, hey, what's that? Or he asks them something to where they, like, open up their towel, and he looks and he's like, oh, never mind.
So there's this gruesome murder and drama mixed in with a man who's looking at people's dicks. For an investigation. You can't see my bunny quotes. And interspersed with this,
I investigate a lot.
They really humanize Park, even though he's a troubled individual and is doing some questionable things. You still kind of feel bad for him because he keeps going to visit this nurse woman who I thought was a prostitute.
I thought it was his wife at first.
No, just his girlfriend, I guess. Because he pays her money, but I guess he pays her money because she does, like, massages and other things that to help him. And I like their kind of back and forth,
too.
You know? Yes. But I don't think it was for money.
It was for...
I thought it was.
Therapeutic.
I think it's because they like each other. But it's bizarre because they do end up getting married.
Yeah.
And having kids.
Okay.
But it's weird. But yeah, I like their little scenes together. And there's a lot of weird, quirky things in this where it's like him with that woman and they're sitting by a lake resting and he's got an IV in him. Mm-hmm. She hooks him up to an IV because that's how bad that's how much the investigation's been weighing on him and just ruining him. Because he stays like, there's montages of him just staying up all day and all night trying to solve the case. So he's trying to aspire to that super detective, but he can't quite get there because his morals are all out of whack.
Well, that and like
and he's a terrible detective.
He's a terrible
really
detective, but it's also like his morals are all out of whack. He's a terrible detective in terms of just not being able to do his job properly, and he's taking on one of the hardest things to do as a detective, and that's find out a murder. And he's tenacious, even though he sucks.
Yes, he is. That's one thing we can all say is he is tenacious. And there's a great little scene with him and his girlfriend, and she's like, why don't you just ask a fortune teller or a shaman or something? He's like, maybe that'll help. And then you think he's going to go, oh, no, whatever. That's not going to work.
And immediately...
Next scene, he's talking to a shaman. And then the lady is like, if you buy this scroll... And he's like, no, I don't want to buy any trinkets. I don't care. And then they cut to him using the trinket that he had bought with his buddy, the sidekick. They're in the woods where the last murder took place. And they're like, we spill the ink on it. We have to sprinkle it with some of the crime scene dirt. And then once the picture dries, we'll see the image of the killer. Dan, can you believe that this never pays off? This isn't a crucial plot point in the film.
High hopes, but...
And is played for laughs. But... while he's there, this is the scene where they see the other detective and he's out there listening to the recording of the song and like smoking a cigarette. And they're all revisiting the crime scene. And then another man shows up.
Yeah.
Who they think is the killer. And this dude shows up. He takes out some panties and a bra, lays them on the ground. He's got some red panties that he's wearing, which is fun. And he starts to, how do you say... Jack attack it?
Jack attack it.
He's going to Wankerston Avenue.
I was watching this with Michelle, and she's like, I don't remember this movie at all. Like, and she was into it, and then as soon as that scene happened, she's like, men are gross. And she just started picking up her phone.
Yeah, they are. And this dude just starts whacking it crazy. He's got a flashlight in his mouth.
Yeah.
The light is pointing down so he can see. It's so weird. Why wouldn't he just do this at home? It's so bizarre. So then they chase him. And there's a pretty cool chase scene, and they do eventually catch him. And how he gets caught, so he goes to this construction area. It was
okay,
good.
So in terms of all the... 'cause we already said how like cinematography is a big thing in this film. This scene especially. There's so many moments in this film where like... they make it slow motion, but they make all the dialogue happen in real time. So this is one of those scenes where they end up in this construction site, and they're like everybody's wearing the same thing because he's one of the construction workers, and they're all wearing masks, and it's just in slow motion, and it just keeps like zooming in to a close up of Joe's face, a close up of Park's face, close up of assistant Jump Kick's face, and they can't find it, but then Park sees, like, whenever a guy bends over, he sees like the outline of those pink panties or whatever.
Those red panties, man. Yeah. Woo! Gotcha.
And then that moment is just so, like, because Park is the main character, you want to be on his side no matter how shitty of a copy he is. And in that moment, it's like he has a small victory, and it's like, oh, yes.
I was rooting for him. And the small victories, I was like, I wanted him to have it because he's having this rivalry with Joe. And they kind of blow up at one point when they're at a bar and they're doing karaoke, and he's talking back and forth with them. And there's a great scene where the chief is like, if I ever see you two idiots argue in front of me again, I'm gonna kill you both. And this is right after he had just thrown up into a bucket and then begged them to take the bucket away because it stunk of vomit. Oh God, there's so many good scenes in this movie. There's no way we're going to be able to to cover them all, obviously. But yeah, and this was great. And how he does this, so he catches the guy, he makes a bunch of them line up, but he already knows who it is. And then he turns around and he just kind of nods to his sidekick buddy, and then the sidekick runs and jump kicks him right to the ground, and then they handcuff him. It's so good. It's like this is a fighting game and he's using an assist or something. Call in Jump Kick Man. And they catch this fucker. They're interrogating him. They can't get any real evidence against him other than he's just a weird pervert. And they interview his family, and they go through his house, and they find these just porn everywhere. So it's like, it could be likely that he could be this dude. They find porno on the floor of his living room where his little kids are playing. They're just pictures of naked women. Yes! It's like, what the fuck? But they cannot pin it on him, and they torture him for like 3 days straight.
And protesters
and interrogate
are starting
him.
to line up outside the police station.
Yes, because now everyone's pissed because they thought they had solved the case before, and now the police department is disgraced because they celebrated and everything, and now they look like a bunch of idiots, because they are, really. And Joe at this point is getting very frustrated because he's like, this isn't the guy. I forget exactly how he figures out that it's not him. But they eventually rule him out, even though he confesses. They're like, this isn't the dude.
Oh, because he has hands. His hands are
Yes,
soft.
his rough hands. Joe interviews this woman who...
It's an apparent survivor of an attack.
Yes, a survivor who doesn't know what the man looks like, but knows that he had very soft hands. And this guy he doesn't have soft hands. He can't be the killer. So they let him go. But, we kind of learn later on that it's eyewitness accounts, not 100% accurate. So who knows? Maybe that guy really was the killer. We don't really know. And there was at one point where I thought maybe the mentally handicapped guy was the killer the whole time. Like it was going to be a, what is it, like the 25th hour type of thing?
Yeah.
Where it's like Ed Norton's like, it really was me, actually. Oh, no.
Well, like, he kind of covers that in his second film, 2005, Mother. Or not, he wasn't on his second film, but, like, basically...
Don't spoil that. I haven't seen it.
Well, you should.
Stop talking about it.
You should.
I want to see that movie really bad, and you just stop talking about it.
It's an excellent movie.
Go watch that movie if you like movies. Hey, guys, do you like movies? Go watch Mother. I haven't even seen the movie.
Not the one that's Mother exclamation point from, like, last year, but the Korean one.
Mother. Tell your children not to walk my way. Mama!
You want to bang
Such a
hands with me?
good song.
Yeah, I love dancing. I've got something to say. I killed your baby today. Doesn't matter much to me as long as it's dead. Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
Danzig.
So there is a scene we skipped that I think we can talk about briefly, because there's some important stuff in this. So they try to set up a stakeout for the killer. They know when it's raining. They know the song is going to be played. They have the female detective in red walking down the streets, and they are in wait for the killer to strike. But the Parkin and Joe are both like in this little outhouse together, kind of waiting. And these two little schoolgirls run by, and then they kind of run in with them. They're talking to them and stuff. And it's kind of weird how like nonchalant everybody is about what they're doing. And there's such a weird disconnect between how serious this is and how lightly it seems everyone is taking it. Because they're just kind of like chilling in there, like, yeah, trying to catch this guy, whatever. And it's just like this neat little scene of them sitting in there and the two girls talking about how like, oh, there's a killer in the outhouse and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's this total fanciful story that these girls tell about how there's a killer at the school outhouse, and then every night it comes and blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of brush it off as like, it's fake. Who cares about that? But then later on, Joe is so desperate that he goes to the outhouse and investigates
And that's where he
it.
finds the woman that he interrogates.
Yes. And you know what's funny too is the woman that he finds in the outhouse that tells him to go speak to the lady on the hill. This is getting a little confusing, but I thought she was the killer.
Really?
Because she kind of looked like maybe she was pretending to be a woman. I don't know. I was like, maybe it's this lady.
Interesting.
That, of course, doesn't pan out. But I like that.
Well, then what else weird happens during this stakeout? Something happens. It's very strange.
Well, tell us.
You have the lady detective in red, She's not the one that gets taken. It's somebody else who's not in red.
It's that other, yes, it's another woman, yes.
Because there's a lady that has like curly hair.
Yes, this is it.
So she was about to put on a red jacket, but doesn't.
Yes.
So that means that the killer was looking at her before she had even been out. So he knew that he was about to do that, or he knew that.
That draws the question about the whole MO.
Exactly.
Like, their whole modus operandi could be completely fucking wrong. The killer might not even give a shit about rain or anything. He might just be killing people. Because the last murder, he doesn't follow any of his MO. Mm-hmm. It's totally different. And he might have done it on purpose because he might have known that the cops are onto him. But who knows? You don't know. And that's the whole point of the film. So, yeah, that lady gets stalked, and there's a great scene of her walking in the rain, and the killer's head pops out of these rice paddies. Mm-hmm. And he's just staring at her, and she goes to turn around, and he just slowly goes back into the rice paddies. I'm like, oh my God. Needless to say, it was a pretty fucking terrifying scene is what I'm trying to get at. They're basically back to square one again. They don't know what the fuck is going on. I believe it's at this point where...
Assistant Dropkick gets fired.
Yes. Yeah. He gets fired for beating up a suspect during an interrogation, because they're trying to do this by the book now. And... they go to investigate the man who's been sending the letters about the song When It Rains. And they go and talk to this guy, and he completely fits the MO. Mm-hmm. And this dude is very cold and calculated. He's not like any other goofy, weird guys that they've been interviewing. He's very reserved and doesn't have much to say. And he has the soft hands. He's got everything. He came into town right when the murder started happening. It's like all of these things are. It's like it's gotta be this guy, but they can't pin it on him because he won't confess, I believe, and they don't have any evidence.
So they send a sample of a girl's dress with semen on it to America because they don't have the technology to run DNA tests.
Yes,
and they have to wait for that test to get back, and they can't hold him legally. They can't detain him, so they have to let him go. And
this sets up a dilemma of, should they bust him now, or should they wait? Because they don't have the evidence, and the only way to bust him now is if they do it dirty. Mm-hmm. But that goes against how they're supposed to police.
But,
I mean, it's like...
But now they're under
scrutiny. Should you break the law to save other people's lives?
Now they're under scrutiny,
exactly.
And they can't, because they fucked up so hard with that second suspect by like detaining him illegally for 3 days.
Yeah, and there's that gray line that they don't want to cross anymore. And it's almost like Park and Joe switch places, where Park is like,
I'm sorry, can't... Did you say gray line?
Yes, I did.
I believe it's blue line.
The thin blue line. That's right. That's right, Dan. So Park doesn't want to abuse anybody anymore, and he wants to do everything by the book. And then Joe is getting so frustrated that he feels like he's letting everyone down. Mm-hmm. And then when the killer kills someone again before the information can get back,
him up.
He goes into like a rage. He's so angry. And what's worse is the woman that gets killed is a girl that he had interviewed and that he's been talking to this whole time. This one of these schoolgirls. So he feels so bad for this girl. He feels like I did this to her because I didn't solve the case fast enough.
But he couldn't, because of his own, morals, where he's like, we have to do, like, because he was the one for the entire thing. He's like, the facts are not going to lie, but now he has to wait for facts.
And he's fucking unhinged because none of his detective work is working. Yeah. So he goes on a tirade, and it gets to the climax of the film, but one more thing I want to talk about.
The bar fight?
Yes, the bar fight. Well, Dan, I want you to tell us all about this, because this is when they discover that the mentally handicapped guy has more information for them.
So they're trying to track him down, but they go to this... Assistant Dropkick McGee is at this bar that's owned by the father of the handicapped kid, and he is drunk as fuck. They're broadcasting his being fired on the TV in the bar.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. And it's talking about police corruption.
All the young girls, like the college age girls, they're like, detectives should just get their dicks chopped off.
Yeah, it was so fucking
So you have all this shit that's just piling up on him, and then he just fucking freaks out and starts, I don't know, violently smashing women's heads into tables.
It's bad.
It is one of the most violent bar fights I've ever seen in my life.
What's crazy, though, is he takes a bottle and he smashes the TV, and then the people in the bar are like, yeah! They think it's really cool. And then it becomes really not cool when he grabs the woman who was talking shit about him and slams her head into the table, and then just all hell breaks loose.
At first I'm like, did he just do that to a woman? And I rewound and I'm like, holy shit. And then later on in the fight, I think it's the same girl. She's on the floor and he fucking kicks her like 3 times.
He's a fucking motherfucker,
Jesus Christ.
dude.
And then that's whenever the
guy.
handicap guy just happens to be coming back home, and then he sees all this chaos happening and he freaks out. I don't even know if he meant to do this. I mean, it would make sense if he did mean to do this, but he picks up a
2x4.
a 2x4 with a rusty nail in it and just whacks this guy in the leg.
He didn't know there was a nail in it. He just wanted to hit him in the leg.
But
with the 2x4.
I just thought like he was upset. I didn't know he was intentionally trying to hit that guy.
Oh no, he was trying to hurt this dude because he was kicking this woman.
Okay.
And he hates these guys because that's what they did to him. So it's like he was trying to stop them. And then that's what leads him to getting his comeuppance finally, which is kind of great. So like he's a real piece of shit. Now he lost his leg. So good. Fuck him. So then they chase the handicap guy up a fucking light pole. He's so afraid of the detectives. He's like, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. You're going to hurt me. He's like, we're not here to hurt you. We know you know more information than you're saying. We want to interview you again. And he's like, no, I told you everything about the murder, but you guys didn't believe me. You tried to frame it on me. So they get more information from him. And some weird info, like they show him a picture of the new suspect with the soft hands, and he says that's the dude who burned me when I was a young kid. Because this guy has like half of his face is scalded. That never comes up again either.
Well, I mean, it's a trauma, so he's molding the trauma of watching the girl that he really liked get raped and murdered with the trauma that happened to him as a child.
So you don't think this guy really did this to him?
I don't think he burned him. I just think it reawakened a different trauma, and he got the suspects confused. And his suspects.
It could be, or it could be this dude
that's
really did this. And it's a
but
weird
the issue is like that guy is super young. It's like that the new suspect looks super young compared to the handicapped guy.
And that also leads into eyewitnesses are unreliable. Yeah. You don't know. You can't just believe everything everyone tells you. You can't believe that the killer has soft hands. Because you don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You can have consideration. Who knows? And another great thing to apologize for this guy. This is before they chase him and everything, the bar fight. They gave him a pair of Nikes as an apology, but it was a pair of knockoff Nikes.
Yes.
And he's wearing them during this scene. And the guy runs away. They chase him, and he runs up onto the train tracks, and he's like, go away, go away. He's trying to shoo them away, and he gets hit by a fucking train.
And there goes...
So now their incompetence...
there goes their only way to detain this guy.
And their only witness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the witness, like, that would be the only thing that they can do to detain the guy while they're waiting for the evidence.
Yeah. And somebody it would be very hard to even have him as a witness since what happened to him because they accused him of the murder. So it's like all this evidence they keep losing either through incompetence or insane failures on their part or stuff out of their hands completely. It's so crazy how much evidence gets lost. And then there's a final shot of the guy's shoes on the tracks. And I'm like, really? Is this the closing of this story? This is what it led up to? I'm like, Jesus Christ. So after all of this, they're at their wit's end, really. Mm-hmm. And Joe basically kidnaps the guy he thinks is the killer, the soft hands killer or whatever, because he feels so responsible for these murders and everything. And he's beating him up. He brings him to a train tunnel, which I think the only reason they bring him there is because the shots here are amazing. Yeah. It's like, we gotta have some really cool cinematography here. It's gonna be great. And he has a gun pointed at this dude's head. He's like, you're gonna tell me that you killed these people or I'm gonna blow your brains out. And the dude is like, fine, I admit that I did it. He's like, is that what you want to hear? But it's like, it's not a real confession. Mm-hmm. So it's a big critique on torture itself. Yeah. How it doesn't work. Because you can torture somebody all day and they'll just tell you whatever you want them to tell you. And so there's so many different multi-layered things of this movie. There's the crooked police and how torture and all that stuff doesn't work. And how, like, even if you're a good detective, murders still might go unsolved through circumstances, all this other stuff.
I feel like that's why this film is so good, because the title encapsulates every tension about, because like
Memories.
how often, Jared, do you depend on your memory as being accurate?
Exactly. It's
You
unreliable.
can't, not even your own fucking memory is reliable.
You could think of something that happened to you when you were a child. Like, I remember when I pricked my hand on a cactus or something, and all my parents laughed at me, and I cried or whatever, and then they took me and we got ice cream. That shit could have never have happened. You could have just fabricated that in your brain. A whole memory that you just think is 100% real. There's no way for you to really know, I guess. It's like tons of shit like that where you just have a dream and that becomes something in your head.
Whenever
like,
it has
I kinda
to do
remember
with
that.
police work and an entire investigation, like an entire criminal law investigation, is predicated upon somebody's abstract word. It's a beautiful title. It fits it so well.
So we have all that, and then we have this the whole political landscape at the time of them running the drills. I don't know. Do you know much about the history of Korea going on back then? Because they would do these national drills.
Yeah, well, national drills, but also like protests were happening quite a bit.
Yes.
I
With
think
riots and everything in the streets.
president was assassinated in 88. It was either 80 or 88. I know that's like a really big.
Years after.
I know a little bit about the South Korean, North Korean history just because like my thesis demanded that I studied about it. But basically, South Korea, the South and the North were flip-flopped at one point. Like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, North Korea had the economic upsurgence, and like they were super, they were a better superpower than South Korea was. And then with the assassination of this president and the inauguration of a new president, and the allied with America and just getting a foothold in the economy, that's whenever South Korea kind of took off, and that was in the mid-'80s. So South Korea was not really a financial superpower until the mid-'80s. So this is right around the time where, there's a shift in Korean culture from north to south, like just flip-flopping their economic standings.
Yeah. And there's a great little thing where they're like, we need to set up policemen out in the streets looking for this killer while it's raining.
But every policeman is busy quelling the protests.
Dealing with rioters. Yeah. And how do they deal with rioters? They beat the shit out of them, which they show. They just like kick them in the head.
Yeah,
it's fucking
Bong
crazy.
Joon-ho uses that a lot. He does it in The Host too, where he brings up the back in the 80s where actually the killer from this film, or the supposed killer, he is a character in The Host that was a college student during the 80s where all these things were happening, and he's really good. He's the character that throws the Molotov cocktails. They explain why he's so good at making Molotov cocktails is because he did it during the riots in the 80s.
Whoa, Jesus. Wow. So then we have this scene. He's about to kill this fucking dude. And then Park runs up. He's like, no. You can't kill him. You can't kill him. And he's like, I have this letter here that has the results of the semen analysis or whatever. And he's like, we'll finally have this letter. We can finally get you. And he goes under the bridge and he's looking at it.
Covering it with the suspect's blood. That's all over his hands.
We all know that it's going to say negative or inconclusive. And it does. And he's so angry. He's like, I don't need this. He's so out of control. He's like, I don't even need this information.
He starts to cry.
He's like, I don't care. Yeah. So then he tries to shoot the dude, and then it's just him and Park trying to stop him, which is funny because the whole movie Park has been the exact opposite. And they're fighting together, and then there's a great scene where Park stops Joe from shooting, and he grabs the killer, or suspect, I guess, and he's holding him by the face, and he's like looking into his eyes. He's like, are you the killer? Did you do it? And then he's staring at him, and he's just like, I just don't know. I just don't know. And it brings back to an earlier scene where his detective sidekick buddy is like, there's two guys over in this room. They're in the police station. And he's like, two men were involved in a crime. One man raped the other man's wife. He's like, which one of these two men raped? And which one was the husband? And he's looking at them, and you think he's going to say some clever thing. Well, like, I know because this man's cufflinks or whatever. And this other guy doesn't have a wedding ring. Something like that. But the scene just cuts away. He just stares at them for a while, and he can never figure out what. Like, who? And then that keeps permeating throughout the entire film of, like, his expectations of what it means to be a detective. And then it ends on that scene of him just staring at this guy like, all my gut feelings and everything, it doesn't mean shit because we just don't know. Yeah. We don't have enough evidence to get you. And they just let him go.
Yeah.
And like his buddy tries to shoot at him, he stops him, and then that dude slinks off into the night.
But then it gets into the epilogue that leads into the best ending.
Amazing.
God, I would say not even top 10. I think this is definitely my top 5 favorite endings. But he has basically quit the force because the woman that he was, being friends with sexually before, he's like, why don't you just quit the police job, get a different job? And he's like, why would I do that?
The year is 2565. Everyone is a cyborg now. And the
year is 2003. He has kids, but he still has his old habits where it's like, you were up all night last night playing video games to his kid. And he's like, no, I wasn't. He's like, look me in the face and tell me that again or something. He's like, your eyes are all...
No, he says, are you good at them? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, at least you're good at that because you certainly are good at studying.
It's like, why don't you go outside? But he uses evidence at that point because the kid's eyes are all bloodshot. So he has learned from his previous mistakes where he's like,
oh, yeah.
He's not just going on a whim and going on his intuition. He's like, I'm going to analyze
he's not a detective anymore.
Exactly. That's the best part about it. So he's a salesman for like this, I don't know, printer company or something.
Yeah, and, some shit.
He's going through that same rice paddy field that we started in. And he's like, stop for a second. And he goes out to that first drain that that we found the girl in, and then he goes and he looks at it.
Baby's first drain.
It's very, very, methodical. Like it's a very slow paced scene, and it's like it's meditative. He's meditating on like his past and like how.
What's amazing is that this scene looks exactly the same as it did 10 years ago. The same lighting, the same time of day. It's all the same.
So he goes down there, and then he hears from behind. He's like, "What are you doing?" And then he turns around. And it's a little girl. He's like, this is important to me. Something happened here once, and I just wanted to remember it or something. And then she's like, oh, that's weird. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, there's a guy that came in like just the other week that said basically the same thing, that he said he did something here once. And he's like, what did he look like? And she's like, I don't know, plain. It's like, plain in what way? He's like, I don't know, ordinary. And then he fucking looks at her. And the camera, it's just a close-up of his face. And then he just really quickly looks at the camera. And the camera hangs on his face for maybe 5 seconds. So he's looking directly at the audience. And that just tells you that, like, he is looking for anybody in fucking South Korea. And you're never going to find it. And
the terror on his face, his eyes are searching and looking. You can see him searching his mind. He's just like, all that work we did was meaningless. Because we thought he was a handsome guy
I'm getting
with soft hands, all
goosebumps
stuff.
just talking about this. It's so
And the little girl was like, oh no, he's just like an ordinary normal guy. I don't know. He looks like everyone else. And he's like, everything we thought was wrong about the killer. We have no idea who the killer is.
Like it's layered too. So you have like him searching his thoughts, but the fact that it's just a really quick turn to the camera so you see his face, he looks like an ordinary dude too.
Yeah.
So that just is like, it's reminding the audience that this is what an ordinary person looks like.
What's crazy too is I was reading some fan theories. People are thinking that when he looks out into the audience and looking at the people watching the film, that it's very possible that the killer could be watching the film.
That's 100% what it is.
Because they've never caught him.
Yeah. And that's that. If you think about watching it in 2003 in South Korea, knowing that story,
how amazing.
That is the most terrifying scene in the movie.
And if you were the murderer guy, why wouldn't you want to watch a movie about yourself?
Oh god.
So it's pretty fucking
this
insane.
Film is a masterpiece, you're right.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, the more I may need to adjust my top 10 list now. Like, it's so fucking good.
It is a truly fantastic film on so many different levels of enjoyment you could have. So that was fun, wasn't it?
Yes. I'm glad you liked it.
That was a great.
I was a little worried
final
because
thoughts, the movie's great.
The last couple times I've been like, "Oh, this movie's awesome." You're like, "I don't know."
99 Homes, more like total fucking trash. Next. No, that movie wasn't trash. I'm just kidding. So yeah, I mean, our final thoughts are the movie was great.
Okay.
Obviously, for both of us.
Yes.
Danny,
yes.
I got a movie for you.
I'm excited because you were prefacing this prior to the podcast. You're like, don't look anything up.
So I saw this with my girlfriend already.
Is it a Netflix feature?
Yes, it is. You are forbidden from looking it up or reading anything about it. I will not even describe what the film is about.
I'm going to write it down because I'm going on holiday for about 18 days. So I'm just going to write it down, put it on this computer on a sticky note,
Yes.
and just come back and just watch it immediately.
It is called The Similars.
The Similars.
Yes, it is I believe it is a Spanish film, so I think it's actually The Similars. But, you know, I'll give you the year.
Please do.
So you at least know that. It's 2015 is when this movie was made. You are not allowed to know anything else about it.
Am I allowed to take a stab at the genre right now?
What it is about. Okay, go for it.
Is it a horror film?
Yes. Is there anything else you want to guess? This is kind of fun.
Does it have to do with things that are alike?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
What else can you glean from that title?
Is the uncanny valley part of this? Like, you're like, oh, that's a little bit too alike for my liking.
Nah, I don't think so.
All right, I failed.
Boy, oh boy. Let's just say, Dan, I don't think you've ever seen a movie like this.
Oh, challenge accepted.
So, I hope this was something, guys. And please find us where you're going to find us. You know, all that old boys bullshit. We're on Twitter. We're on Stitcher. We're on Sminstagram. We're on Blimpstablam. We're on all those things. Podbean is where we're hosted. Go to podbean.com. Old Boys Podcast. You search for us, you'll find us. Oh, my goodness. We're still on SoundCloud. We got like little clips there and stuff and links. All that fun shit. But anywho, Danny, I believe it's your final word time. Let's hear it.
I remember